My fiancé got a face tattoo without telling anyone and ruined our life in a way no one imagined. Hey everyone, welcome to Story Nest. If you love great stories, make sure to subscribe. It helps more than you know. I never imagined my life would unravel like this. One minute, I was engaged to the woman I had spent years loving and planning a future with. The next, I was staring at the wreckage of something I thought was unbreakable. It all started with a lie, one so small I almost didn't question it. Maya, my fiancée of 6 years, had taken a few sick days from work. She claimed she was feeling under the weather, and at first, I didn't think much of it. She was responsible, steady, the kind of person who never let things spiral out of control. If she needed rest, I figured she deserved it. But something felt off. She wasn't answering calls like she usually did, and when I offered to come over and bring her soup, she declined with an uncharacteristic sharpness. Even her sister, Lena, was starting to get worried when Maya bailed on their lunch plans for the 3rd time in a row. When Lena finally dropped by unannounced, she discovered the truth. And then, just like that, my world flipped upside down. Maya had gotten a face tattoo. Not just any tattoo, bold, black Japanese characters inked in a vertical line from her forehead down beneath her eye. A decision so out of character, so wildly reckless, that I could hardly process it when Lena told me. Maya had always been composed, measured, someone who thought through every decision before making it. She never even hinted at wanting a tattoo, let alone something so extreme. I rushed over to see her, still in disbelief. And when she opened the door, my stomach dropped. The swelling and redness around the ink made it look even worse, her skin still raw from whatever impulsive urge had driven her to do this. "You don't understand the meaning," she said, her voice defensive the moment she saw my reaction. "Then explain it to me," I said, struggling to keep my voice calm. She crossed her arms, refusing to meet my eyes. "I didn't tell anyone because I knew you'd all try to stop me. I needed to do this for myself." "For yourself?" I repeated, dumbfounded. "Maya, you work in finance. Your job is literally about professionalism and client trust. Did you even consider how this might affect your career?" At that, her face darkened. "Not everything is about work, Liam. Maybe I was sick of playing by everyone else's rules." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about a tattoo. This was about something deeper, something I hadn't seen coming. I wish I could say we had a rational conversation after that, but we didn't. She got angrier, accused me of trying to control her, of not supporting her right to express herself. I told her she was being reckless, self-destructive. The argument spiraled, words thrown like knives until she finally stormed off, locking herself in her bedroom. That night, she blocked my number. By morning, our engagement was over. I barely slept that night. My mind kept racing, replaying the argument over and over, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Maya had never been impulsive. She wasn't the type to make rash decisions, let alone ones that could destroy everything she had worked for. By morning, I tried to call her again, straight to voicemail. My texts? Left on read. It wasn't just me she had shut out. Lena called me, frustrated and worried. "She's not answering me either," she said. Or Mom and Dad. That's when I knew this wasn't just some rebellious phase. Something was seriously wrong. Her parents were devastated. They were traditional, deeply rooted in their culture, and while they weren't the type to outright forbid things, a face tattoo was beyond anything they could accept. In Japan, tattoos still carried heavy associations with crime, and Maya knew that. She had grown up knowing that. The fact that she had done this anyway, without telling a soul, was enough to break them. But none of that seemed to matter to her. When she finally resurfaced days later, it wasn't to apologize. It wasn't to explain. It was to tell me she never wanted to see me again. I woke up that morning to a box on my porch. Inside was everything I had ever given her: letters, photos, little gifts I had gotten her over the years. And on top of it all, our engagement ring, carelessly tossed in like it meant nothing. There was no note, no message, nothing. I stood there for what felt like forever, staring at that tiny piece of metal and stone, my chest tightening with something between anger and heartbreak. Maya was gone, and she had made damn sure I knew it. Lena was just as blindsided as I was. She won't answer my calls, she told me, her voice laced with frustration and worry. She's shutting everyone out. I don't know what to do anymore. I didn't know what to do either. The woman I had loved for 7 years had vanished overnight. In her place was someone reckless, angry, unpredictable. And the worst part? I didn't recognize her at all. Weeks passed, then months, and Maya never came back. At first, I kept hoping this was temporary, that she'd snap out of whatever this was, realize what she had done, and reach out. But that call never came. Instead, I heard everything secondhand, through Lena, through whispers from mutual friends. And none of it was good. She lost her job within a month. It wasn't a surprise. She worked in finance, where appearances mattered almost as much as numbers. When she finally returned to the office, her tattoo on full display, it didn't take long before she was called into HR. Lena told me Maya had acted shocked, like she hadn't even considered that it could be a problem. She tried to argue, to fight it, but there was no saving it. She was let go, and just like that, the career she had spent years building was gone. After that, things got worse. Her family tried to help, but Maya didn't want it. Anytime they reached out, she pushed them away harder. It escalated to the point where she called the police on her own parents, accusing them of harassment. That was the moment Lena gave up. She's not the same person, she told me. I don't know who she is anymore. I had to make a choice then, keep watching this disaster unfold or walk away. I chose to walk away. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. The day I told Lena I couldn't do it anymore, I felt like I was betraying someone I had once sworn to love forever. But Maya wasn't Maya anymore. She had burned every bridge, shattered every piece of the life she had built, and now she was standing alone in the wreckage. I wanted to believe there was a way to save her. But some people don't want to be saved. Months passed, and I did my best to move on. It wasn't easy. 7 years of love doesn't just disappear overnight, no matter how badly someone tries to erase you from their life. I thought about Maya constantly, wondering where she was, what she was doing, if she ever regretted any of it. But I forced myself not to reach out. Lena and I still kept in touch, though even she had started distancing herself from her sister. She won't listen to anyone, she admitted one night over the phone. She's making every bad decision possible, and if you try to help, she acts like you're the enemy. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I already knew. Maya had lost more than just her job. She lost direction. Without work to ground her, she spiraled further. She started hanging out with people she never would have associated with before, reckless types, partygoers who seemed to live for chaos. She burned through her savings quickly, making rash, impulsive purchases, acting like money didn't matter. Then, the rumors started. At first, I refused to believe them. Maya had always been responsible, even when stressed. But Lena eventually confirmed it. Maya had started using. It wasn't just drinking or smoking a little weed to take the edge off. It was worse. Meth. Possibly fentanyl. I don't know how it started, Lena admitted. But once it did, she didn't stop. And suddenly, everything made sense. The erratic behavior. The paranoia. The anger. The face tattoo. It wasn't just a rebellious act. It was the kind of impulsive, irreversible decision someone makes when their mind isn't working right. The Maya I knew would have never destroyed her career, her relationships, her entire life like this. She hadn't just changed. She was sick. I wondered if things would have been different if I had fought harder, if I had tried to stop her before she went too far. But she had pushed me out. She had pushed everyone out. And I had let her. For a long time, I carried that guilt with me. It sat in my chest like a weight, an unshakable feeling that I had failed her somehow. But eventually, I forced myself to accept the truth. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. And Maya? She had made her choice. A year passed, then another. And in that time, I did what I could to move forward. I won't lie and say it was easy. The pain of losing Maya didn't fade overnight. There were nights when I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our breakup, wondering if there was some pivotal moment where I could have said or done something different to stop her from going down that path. But I had to accept that some things were beyond my control. Life kept moving, whether I was ready for it or not. I buried myself in work, focused on my career, on rebuilding my sense of self. I went on a few dates, tried to put myself back out there, but no one ever felt right. It wasn't that I was still in love with Maya, I wasn't. But she had left scars on me, ones I hadn't fully healed from. And then, out of nowhere, she came back. It was late, past midnight, when my phone buzzed. At first, I thought I was dreaming when I saw her name on the screen. I hadn't heard from her in nearly 2 years. She had blocked me, cut me out of her life completely. Now, suddenly, she was reaching out. I hesitated before answering. Some part of me already knew this wasn't going to be a happy reunion. Hello? There was silence for a moment. Then, a quiet, shaky voice. Hey, it's me. Maya. Her voice was different, softer, weaker. It was like all the confidence, all the fire she once had been drained from her. I didn't know what to say. 100 questions filled my mind, but none of them seemed right. She spoke first. Can we talk? Against my better judgment, I agreed. She came over the next night. When I opened the door, I barely recognized her. Maya had always been beautiful, poised, put together, with sharp eyes that could cut through anyone's bullshit. But the woman standing in front of me was a shadow of who she used to be. She had lost so much weight that her clothes hung off her frame. Her once vibrant skin looked pale and sallow, her eyes sunken and hollow. She was covering the tattoo with heavy makeup, but up close, I could still see the faint outline of the ink. She stepped inside, hugging herself like she was cold. Thanks for letting me come over, she murmured. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded and led her to the couch. We sat there in silence for a while before she finally spoke. And when she did, she told me everything. The drugs, the downward spiral, the things she had done to survive after burning every bridge she had. She admitted she had lost everything, her job, her friends, even her family. They had tried to help her, but she had pushed them too far. Eventually, they had to walk away too. I don't blame them, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't blame you either. I should have felt relief hearing that. Maybe even some kind of closure. But all I felt was exhaustion. She told me she was trying to get clean, that she wanted to turn her life around. That she needed someone to believe in her. Then she said the words that I had been dreading. I want to try again. With you. I had known it was coming. Maybe not in those exact words, but the moment I saw her at my door, I knew this was where it was headed. And for the first time since she had left, I didn't feel torn. I didn't feel unsure. I knew my answer. Maya, I said carefully, I'm glad you're trying to get better. But we can't go back. Not after everything. She flinched like I had slapped her. But I'm different now. You're still you, I said. And that's the problem. Her expression hardened. That fire, that defensiveness, it was still there, buried beneath all the regret. So you're saying none of this matters? That nothing I do can change what happened? I'm saying that I can't forget what you did, I said. I can forgive you, but I can't pretend like it didn't happen. And I can't go through it again. She stared at me for a long time. Then, without another word, she got up and walked out. And just like that, Maya was gone again. This time, I thought it was for good. But I was wrong. For a while after Maya left that night, I thought that was the end of it. She had come back, asked for another chance, and I had said no. It hurt, but it was final. She had walked away without another word, and I had hoped, she would stay gone. But Maya wasn't done with me yet. At first, it was just texts. Random messages at odd hours, sometimes long-winded apologies, other times cryptic one-liners like, I just wanted you to know I'm trying. I ignored most of them. I didn't have the energy to keep reopening that wound. Then the calls started. She would call late at night, sometimes multiple times in a row. The few times I answered, she would cry, telling me how lost she felt, how much she regretted everything. It was exhausting. No matter how much I told her that we couldn't fix things, she wouldn't listen. She didn't want to hear it. Then it escalated. One morning, I walked outside to find my tires slashed. All four of them. The moment I saw it, my stomach dropped. I wanted to believe it wasn't her. Maybe it was some random vandalism. But deep down, I knew. That same day, I got a call from my office security. Maya had shown up at my workplace. She hadn't caused a full scene yet, but she had waited outside, watching the entrance. My coworkers had noticed her lingering and reported it. I had no choice. I called the police. That was the hardest decision I had ever made. No matter what she had done, some part of me still saw her as the woman I had once loved. The woman who had shared years of memories with me. But I couldn't keep pretending she was that person anymore. The police found her later that night. They didn't arrest her, but they gave her a warning, a firm one. One officer must have put the fear of God into her because after that, she disappeared from my life completely. I should have felt relieved, but all I felt was exhausted. And then, 6 months later, I got the call. It was Maya's sister. I hadn't heard from her since everything had gone down, so when I saw her name flash on my phone, I had a bad feeling. I answered. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. Her voice was hollow, detached. She's dead. I didn't react right away. The words didn't register at first. Maya is dead. An overdose. Sunday morning. Her sister didn't give me many details, but I didn't need them. I already knew how this story ended. She had been running from her demons for too long. And eventually, they had caught up to her. Her parents weren't having a funeral. There would be no service, no memorial. Just a quiet cremation, a silent farewell from a family that had already grieved their daughter long before her body had given up. I should have felt something. Sadness, anger, guilt. But all I felt was nothing. Not numbness. Not shock. Just an emptiness where emotions should have been. I sat there after the call, staring at my hands, trying to grasp the reality of it. Trying to understand why I wasn't crying, why I wasn't mourning. And then it hit me. The Maya I had loved, the Maya I had built a future with, had already been gone for years. The person who had died that Sunday wasn't her. That version of Maya had died long before the drugs, the tattoo, the downward spiral. I had already lost her. And I had already grieved. I still miss her. The real her. The woman I had spent 6 years with, who had held me when I cried, who had been my best friend before she became my fiancé. I still think about the life we could have had. The one we were supposed to have. But this was just the final page of a story that had ended long ago. Maya was gone. And I was still here. In the days following Maya's death, I expected the grief to hit me like a delayed tidal wave. I kept waiting for it. Kept expecting to wake up one morning and feel the weight of it crashing over me. But it never came. Instead, I felt detached. Like I was watching someone else's life unfold from a distance. People who knew our history, mutual friends, old colleagues, reached out to check on me. They spoke in hushed tones, offered condolences, asked if I needed anything. I appreciated it. I really did. But I didn't know what to say. I'm fine. It's a shame, but it's been a long time. I don't really know how to feel. All of it was true, and none of it was. The hardest part was speaking to Maya's sister again. She had been the one constant through everything, the one person who had seen both sides of Maya's downfall. She had fought for her sister long after I had walked away, long after the rest of their family had given up. And now, even she sounded tired. I thought I'd feel more, she admitted over the phone one evening. But I think I already did my mourning months ago. Maybe even years ago. I understood that all too well. Maya's family kept things quiet. There was no service, no gathering. Just a cremation and a few loose ends to tie up. Her sister told me she'd be handling the rest, sorting through what little Maya had left, settling whatever remained of her affairs. She didn't have much, she told me. Everything she owned was either stolen or sold off by the end. There's nothing left. That part hit me harder than I expected. For so long, Maya had been someone who planned for the future. She had dreams, ambitions. She had always talked about saving up for a house, traveling, building a life she could be proud of. And now, she had left nothing behind. No belongings. No legacy. Just scattered fragments of a life that had unraveled too fast. I found myself sitting in silence a lot after that. Not crying, not spiraling, just sitting, thinking, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. Would things have been different if I had fought harder? If I had seen the warning signs sooner? If I had pushed her to get help before it was too late? I knew those thoughts weren't fair. I knew I wasn't responsible for the choices she had made. But logic didn't stop the what-ifs from circling my mind like vultures. At night, I started dreaming about her. Not the Maya from the end, not the angry, desperate woman who had torn her own life apart, but the Maya from years ago. I dreamed about the way she used to laugh, the way she would roll her eyes whenever I made a dumb joke, but still smile afterward. I dreamed about late-night talks, about road trips and quiet mornings drinking coffee together. I woke up from those dreams feeling hollow. Because when I opened my eyes, I had to remind myself that she was really gone. Not just from my life, but from the world. Maya was dead. And no matter how much I missed the version of her I had once known, I would never get to speak to her again. Never get to ask her why she did the things she did. Never get to say goodbye the way I wished I could have. And that, more than anything else, was what hurt the most. The days stretched on, blurring together in a haze of routine. Work, errands, sleep. Repeat. For a while, I told myself that was a good thing. That keeping busy was the best way to move forward. If I didn't stop for too long, I wouldn't have to think too hard. Wouldn't have to acknowledge the strange, aching emptiness lingering just beneath the surface. But grief has a way of creeping in when you least expect it. It wasn't the big things that got to me. It was the small, inconsequential moments. Seeing her favorite coffee brand on the grocery store shelf. Hearing a song she used to hum absent-mindedly while cleaning. Catching a glimpse of someone with dark hair and, for half a second, thinking, Maya, before remembering that wasn't possible. Each time, it was like a quiet punch to the gut. Not enough to knock me over, but enough to leave a dull, lingering ache. I never reached out to her sister again. I told myself it was because she needed space, but in truth, I didn't know what to say. What was left to say? She had lost a sister. I had lost someone I once loved. But at the end of the day, we had both already mourned her long before her heart actually stopped beating. So I kept my distance. I threw myself into work, picking up extra hours and volunteering for new projects. My boss, the same one who had given me time off after Maya left, didn't say anything, but I could tell she knew what I was doing. One evening, she pulled me aside after a meeting. "You're working yourself too hard," she said. I forced a smile, just trying to stay productive. She gave me a knowing look. Grief doesn't go away just because you ignore it. I wanted to argue, to tell her that I wasn't grieving, that I had already processed it all, that Maya's death hadn't affected me the way people thought it should. But I didn't, because deep down, I wasn't sure if that was true. Instead, I just nodded and left the office. That night, I went home and pulled out an old box from the back of my closet. It was filled with remnants of my life with Maya, photos, notes, little trinkets we had collected over the years. Things I had packed away after the breakup, but never had the heart to throw out. I hesitated before opening it. And when I finally did, it felt like stepping into a time capsule. There were pictures of us from vacations, birthdays, random lazy Sundays spent curled up on the couch. Movie ticket stubs from our first few dates. A small, handwritten note she had left on my desk once that just said, "Love you, dummy." I had forgotten about that one. I sat on the floor, staring at it for a long time. And for the first time since hearing about her death, I finally felt something. I didn't break down sobbing, didn't collapse under the weight of it all. But I felt it. The loss, the sadness, the finality of it. The Maya in these memories wasn't the same Maya who had screamed at me, slashed my tires, vanished into a drug-fueled haze of self-destruction. She was the Maya I had loved. And that Maya had been gone for a long, long time. I wasn't mourning the woman who had overdosed in some rundown motel. I was mourning the woman who had died long before that, in a way far more painful than any physical death could have been. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually, I put everything back in the box, closed the lid, and slid it back into the closet. Not because I wanted to forget, but because I finally understood that some things aren't meant to be held onto forever. The following weeks were quieter. I stopped searching for distractions. I didn't seek out my old friends or try to throw myself into work so I could avoid facing reality. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to just sit with everything, the good and the bad. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I had spent so much time running from my feelings, convinced that if I just kept moving, I wouldn't have to confront the pain. I wasn't really living, though. Not in any meaningful way. I was just existing. After months of feeling like a stranger in my own life, I started to reclaim pieces of myself I had lost along the way. I picked up old hobbies that I had abandoned. I began exercising again, not to escape my emotions, but to focus on my body's strength, to remember that I could take care of myself. I even started going to therapy. At first, it felt like a waste of time. Sitting in front of someone who didn't know me, trying to untangle all the mess inside my head. But as the weeks passed, something shifted. Slowly, I began to open up. I talked about Maya, of course, but I also talked about my own role in everything, the mistakes I had made, the parts of myself I had ignored, the ways I had allowed someone else to define me for far too long. Therapy wasn't a magic fix, but it helped me make sense of things in a way I hadn't been able to before. It gave me the space to acknowledge how much I had suffered during that relationship, how deep the scars ran, and how they still impacted me, even after Maya was gone. One evening, a few months later, I was sitting in my living room, reading a book. It was a quiet night, nothing special. Then my phone buzzed with a message from Maya's sister. I had been expecting it, though it still caught me off guard. She had reached out a few times in the months following Maya's death, mostly to let me know when things changed, whether it was legal issues or news of her family. She had even asked me to help clear out Maya's old apartment, but I had declined, knowing I wasn't ready to face that part of my past. But this time, the message was different. She was asking if I would be willing to attend a memorial. I stared at the text for a long time, the weight of the decision pressing on me. I had long since made peace with the idea that Maya was gone. The woman I had once loved was gone, and she wasn't coming back. But I had never truly gotten closure. I had never gotten the chance to tell her everything I needed to say, the things I had left unsaid when she disappeared, the things I had bottled up as I tried to forget her. I wasn't sure if attending a memorial would bring me any peace. It might only bring back painful memories, stir up emotions I wasn't ready to face. But I realized I couldn't keep avoiding it forever. I couldn't let the memory of Maya be trapped in a box in my closet. I owed it to myself to go, even if it was just to say goodbye the way I never got the chance to before. The day of the memorial came, and I dressed in dark clothes, more out of habit than necessity. When I arrived at the small, quiet church, I saw a handful of people gathered, most of them family. I was surprised to see Maya's parents there, looking older than I remembered, their eyes tired and distant. I stood at the back, uncertain whether to approach them, unsure of whether my presence would be welcomed or seen as an intrusion. But after a moment, Maya's sister spotted me and motioned me over. She greeted me with a quiet, sad smile, and I offered a nod. We didn't speak much, but we didn't need to. We both knew why I was there. The ceremony was short and somber. Maya's family shared memories of her, bits and pieces of the woman they had loved before everything went wrong. For a brief moment, it felt like the Maya I had known was still there. But it didn't last. Soon, the reality of who she had become seeped in, and I felt that same distance between the woman in those memories and the person I had known in the end. Afterward, I lingered for a while. People started to leave, and I found myself standing by the door, unsure if I should say anything. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Like Maya had always been just out of reach, and now even her memory was slipping away, fading into something I couldn't quite grasp. Maya's sister approached me before I could leave. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice soft, almost apologetic. "I know it wasn't easy, but it means a lot to us." I nodded, not sure what to say in return. I didn't know if it meant a lot to me, but I was here. I was standing in front of them, confronting the past in a way I hadn't been able to before. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it was time to finally let go of the rest of it. I left the church that day with an unexpected sense of finality. It wasn't closure, not exactly. But it was a step forward. A small one, but a step nonetheless. The chapter of my life that had been defined by Maya was over. And for the first time, I was ready to move on. A few weeks after the memorial, I found myself at a strange crossroads. I was no longer the person I had been when Maya and I were together. I had rebuilt myself in a way, piece by piece. I had healed, or at least I thought I had. But something about the closure, the quiet finality of it all, shifted something inside of me. I felt like I was finally free from the grip of the past. But that didn't mean it was easy to move on. Sometimes I'd find myself thinking about Maya, about who she was before the tattoo, before the meth, before the breakdown. The memories would wash over me unexpectedly, and for a moment, I'd feel that familiar ache in my chest. It wasn't love anymore. It wasn't even nostalgia. It was just a kind of lingering sadness for what could have been, for the future we never got to have. I think that's what hit me hardest, the lost potential. The future I had imagined, the plans we'd made, everything that had been so full of promise. But I had to remind myself that people change. Sometimes, they change in ways that are too much for anyone to keep up with, no matter how hard they try. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to envision a future that wasn't tied to Maya. It was strange, unfamiliar. But it was mine. I focused on building a life that was mine and mine alone. I didn't need anyone's approval. I didn't need validation from anyone who wasn't going to be there in the long run. It was a journey of rediscovery. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay stuck in the past any longer. In the months that followed, I met new people, made new friends. I was tentative at first, unsure if I was truly ready to let someone else in. But it didn't take long for me to realize that, eventually, I would be. I wasn't closed off. I wasn't afraid of love. I had just learned to love myself first, and I needed to allow myself that time to heal. Maya's death still lingered in my mind sometimes, but it didn't control me. I learned that it wasn't about erasing the past, it was about finding a way to live with it. To accept that it was part of my story, but not the defining part. And I was no longer the person who had been caught in her web. I was free to be who I was meant to be. I don't know where Maya's path would have led her if she had made different choices, if she hadn't gone down the road she did. But I know that for me, I'm finally starting to feel like I'm on the right path. It's a slow, sometimes painful process, but it's mine. And for the first time in a long time, I can say that I'm okay. Thanks for watching. If you liked the story, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Your support really matters.